bachelor party back in May, and we were standing around in line waiting to get into this thing. The guy turns to me and he's like, "We shouldn't be standing in line, we should be doing stuff, having fun, bachelor party. What's going on here?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know, we just like go out drag racing or whatever." And he's like, "Or we could murder people." And I was like, no. It's Saturday. You should murder people on Saturday. Saturday's for fun. And he was like, "Oh, right, yeah, murder people on Tuesdays. That's a good idea." So we talked a little bit more, and he was like, "Oh, you're a poet. Like, I really want to, you know, read your stuff. I'm not BSing you. Really, send me some of your stuff." So I wrote him this poem called "On Tuesdays I Murder." The days are dark and heavy, and my hand and heart are heavy, and the dread of the witness is heavy, the dread of the judge is heavy, the dread of my mother is heavy, heaviness makes me murder. Saturday is reserved for fun, and Sunday is the Lord's, and Monday is TV night, so Tuesdays I murder. The murder springs inside me like a flower, spills out like rain over a mountain. The murder loosens up the rusty hinges of my body, and we run naked towards the blood, a horse to desert water. But this isn't an oasis, just raw thirst. I take the soft neck in my hands like celery and crack it. I take the torso with the blade and dance around inside it. I pull the hair back from the scalp and cauterize the bone, and then I take the noodle foot and kick it like insensate stone. And that is the well of me, the creature hole where murder lives, and I am witness to it in my hands, I am witness to it in my soul, I am witness to it every mundane workhorse Tuesday. As it climbs a ragged Jacob's ladder, rung by slippery rung, speaking to my flesh just as the sun sets over the soft hips of the hills, the earlobes of the highway, and the squeaking grocery cartwheel of the mind, unsettling itself with every tortured spin. I tumble every Tuesday into sin, and when Wednesday morning comes, the thirst begins to trickle in like tears that no one knows to cry. This next poem I'm going to read has nothing to do with that last poem. They're not related. I also, as well as editing the newsletter for the Austin Poetry Society, I edit the Texas Poetry Calendar. And submissions just opened a week ago. They'll be open until February or so, and we try to publish as many poems as we can each year, so feel free to send something in. And this is from the 2014 calendar. It's a little poem called Ramon de Juarez. When he died, no one went to the funeral. No one sent flowers or sang his favorite tune. We cried into pillows and mute alleyways, at night behind the garden wall and in the lonely grocery aisle, the figs in the garden dark with Ramon, the breeze in the Chitalpa free with Ramon. Okay. I was at a reading in San Antonio not too long ago, and poet down there, Barbara Lazar, has a book called The Flower Book of the Pillow Samurai. And she was explaining the book and saying that cranes, among many other animals in Japanese art, are depictions of fidelity. That's what they represent. And I was about to break up with someone at the time, so I wrote this little poem called Fidelity. The crane represents fidelity, but you are a pigeon. And I was walking along 4th Street with my bike and bagel, tossing you a crumb while the crane flew high above. And speaking of samurai and Japanese art, I was at the Ransom not too long ago as well, and was reading through various articles, and there was this great Canadian critic of literature, mainly, called Hugh Kenner. Some of you may have read some of his articles, really well known. And it was just, digging his vibe, and it was an article on the Divine Comedy, of all things, just kind of looped in there somehow. Just fantastic. The Mark Music translation had just come out, and he was just going off on pros and cons. It's a great read. But I was just, and I was looking at Dylan Thomas and T.S. Eliot and all kinds of stuff. Ransom's great, you should go. And was just sort of inundated with the rhythm of his writing and the writing he was talking about. So wrote this little poem called Who Was Hugh Kinner? Was he man or fish? He certainly swam in waves of words, the way Leviathan, a simpleton, a hungry mouth. He was a man. He certainly ate his fill. Dinner parties were a bore, but Paris needed them. Augusta needed him. He took his lunch in a pail. The Athenaeum was to him a jail. He was a fish. The tanks of Madison Avenue walled him in. He sunk his head in books to breathe. Light was an illusion of food. Breast was an illusion of feeding. He sucked his mammalian traits dry. He was a mastermind. Oh, Hugh, so lonely while alive. If memory teaches anything, that thing is in a book. He was a man. He read. He once absent-mindedly lost a shoe. The roe deer is a figure for collapse. Oh, Hugh, we solemnize you. And Hugh Kinner wrote mostly about Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot, knew a lot of the modernist poets that he wrote about, and spoke rather disparagingly about Dylan Thomas. Didn't really care for his work, but I do. And so, I was reading Kinner and reading Thomas and trying to just sort of put the two together among many other things I'm researching at the Ransom. And I was thinking about all that, and I was at Antone's just up the street here, and they had a vinyl of Dylan Thomas reading for like $5. I couldn't resist. So I had that on, I was getting in the shower, I was just thinking about all this, and the first lines of this poem hit me, and I was like, I said out loud, am I about to do this? And I turned around, faced the wall. I was like, yep, I guess so. Got out, wrapped a towel around me, ran to the computer, typed this poem out, got back in the shower, dusted off. I can hear Thomas reading Fern Hill sometimes as I step into the shower. Its little waves of sound creating a convincing whole, unbroken sheet on sheet, like a wedding bed I step into sometimes, while Thomas reads Fern Hill and other collected works, drawn together like the strains of water in a fountainhead, commingling in that windfall light, a shower in the breeze, my hair in the falling water, your architecture in the bed, and the sound coming in like sheets, like white, unruffled sheets before we turn out the lights. The poem ends. And also on that record is Dylan Thomas reading his poem called Poem on His Birthday, which I completely stole this title from. So, in the cormorant scud. Wings are falling just as often as they are flying, but we only see the flying, see what we can't understand and call it science, and call it sleep and knowledge and the other few comforts in an elemental world that moves and turns and spins and shifts and gyres and tumbles and falls. Let's not forget, as often as it rises and falls, the ocean rises and falls like the swimming birds in the liquid air of the solid sun we do not understand. We do not understand, but call it cormorant, and hold back tears while through the starry night we scud. Francisco de Goya, great Spanish painter, also did a few sketches, pastels, that sort of thing. And one of them blows me away every time I look at it, and it's basically a picture of a Colossus. There's a whole series of Colossus paintings, but there's a sketch that he never painted of the Colossus sitting on a hillside. You can just see like this little farmhouse in the bottom right corner of the painting, this huge expansive sky and the moon, in a sort of like Rodin's thinker sort of pose. And I encourage you all to check it out. There's something very moving about it to me. So, Colossus with Crescent Moon by Francisco de Goya. In the world there is a rhythm we do not see. We do not see the rhythm in the world, yet there it is. A rhythm in the world we see and do not see, there being and not being seen, like children in the rhythm of parents in the world. in the unseen rhythm of the world that is and is not seen. In the world, there is a rhythm we do not see, like children and their parents, heard but rarely understood, each in their own world, heard but unseen, the way God perhaps sees the world but does not understand or hear. And that particular theme is something that I see quite subjectively in a lot of paintings and art. And here's another much lighter poem on basically the same theme, called Tourism. From where God sits, the earth is mostly boring clouds. Tornadoes are nice, but so short-lived. Trees over the Amazon can sometimes brush his toes. Tuna, jumping ocean waves, glint like angels as they pray. God is sick of the great wall, that horizontal tower of Babel the devil laid. And Italy and the Gulf Coast and Polynesian islands 1 through 24 look like ants from up on high. Someday, perhaps, God will see a picture of Nebraska or some alkali flats flash across his universal mind and say, maybe I should visit there. And my last poem will be dedicated to future co-host A.R. Rogers. She's at a funeral right now, so she couldn't make it tonight. This Halloween, months before this Halloween, we were texting back and forth, and she sent me a text in all caps saying, I've never had like a paired costume for Halloween. Make this happen for me. I don't care much for Halloween. I just say to myself, like, what, you're going to be a pirate for a night and there's just going to be pirate gear in your closet for a year? What's up with that? But we figured something out. I dressed up as the deceased Hart Crane. He drowned himself, jumped into the Gulf of Mexico. She dressed up as Virginia Woolf, who, if you don't know, put stones in her pockets and just walked into a river. And that was the end of that. So yeah, but before all that came to pass, I wrote this little poem called Considering Us as Vampires. No one else can cut you here, no one else can touch. Do what you will, indulge your nightly whims. Let the sun put his rough hands on your shoulders if you must. But only I will enter in, only I fill these punctures with my glistening teeth. Suck you dry, our fluids commingling like fruit and wine. Only I taste the living breath of God just underneath your skin. And when the night begins, I love you to death. Take you in my hands, the parts between our joints flexible and liquid as a tongue. Dig in. Thanks.